I went to Universal Studios for 2 days, and I went to SeaWorld for a day. So I was everywhere. But I was on It's a Small World when Politico's story broke about the leaking of the opinion. And that's really where I'm super fired up, Buck, because this is me as a lawyer. In my life, we have never had a Supreme Court opinion like this leak. And so this immediately, to me, is an attempt to put pressure, certainly put a target potentially in the world we live in today, a violent nature target on the Supreme Court justices who are potentially going to overturn Roe v. Wade. It is designed, I think, to put more pressure on Democrats to end the filibuster at 60 votes and make it a 50-vote majority so that they can expand the Supreme Court. As soon as it came out and I read everything that Politico wrote, those were my immediate thoughts right off the top. And I know you talked about this a lot yesterday, obviously, as it was such a monumental story. My prescription here, Buck, would be John Roberts needs to join this opinion and make it 6-3, and it needs to be immediately released as is to end, at least on some level, the violent threats and danger that are potentially out there for all of the conservative justices who are voting to overturn Roe v. Wade. And the other thing I would continue to hammer home is this doesn't end Roe v. Wade in terms of abortion, right? It puts it back on the states where this probably should have been from the get-go, makes it what it is, a political issue, and allows everybody who has a strong opinion on abortion to advocate for their state legislature, for their state senate, for their governors, so that politics, they can actually make a decision on a political nature. Anybody who's been to law school and has read Roe v. Wade, it is an awfully written opinion, and it was clearly designed to get to the result that it did, but it has been a absolute mess for whatever it is, 50 years nearly now. And so putting it back on the states, I think, is the way that this should have been resolved. I actually hope that this will take some of the heat in the long range, Buck, out of this issue, because people can advocate for it. You can support candidates on whichever side you want to support, and allow the political process to play out, as opposed to allowing 9 justices, constantly shifting 9 justices to make decisions about this.
Yeah, to the degree that it's possible, the political process through self-governance and the legislature, of course, rooted in the Constitution. This was a bastardization of constitutional principle to create a right where clearly none existed. But you can either have consensus or you can have conflict management through the process of the states voting on and dealing with these issues and the complexities therein. Instead, we had the one size from the Supreme Court fits all approach on a very, very important, very emotional, let's be honest, emotional issue for a lot of people. And now you're seeing as well, Clay, a meltdown underway. It's hard to even refute the arguments that are being made against this because they are so varied, flimsy, and irrational at the same time. Now, I know there are some arguments that are obviously more serious than others about this. I mean, you're having people say now, oh, well, this will lead to overturning all Supreme Court precedents. I mean, that's just a bad faith argument because there are some precedent for overturning precedents. We could name what the cases are. Everybody knows that. But I also just think that people have gotten used to not having to even, the left, the pro-abortion lobby, they've gotten used to not even having to make the argument. They just point to, like it's a big neon sign, it's a constitutional right, and everything flows from that. And a lot of people, half the country roughly, give or take, have been sitting there saying, okay, we could have a whole discussion about what the restrictions and everything should be or whatever it may be, but this whole it's a constitutional right thing is obvious bullcrap, okay? We shouldn't be, but we were forced to deal with that for 50 years. So I think there's now a recognition, Clay, that even though there will be, as you're saying, there'll be abortion dealt with as a state's legislative issue. The people who are in favor of this and Planned Parenthood and all the rest of them, they're going to have to actually make the case for why should it be at 6 months, at 3 months, at 4 weeks, at 6 weeks. What are the realities here, and what's the argument? Instead of just pointing to the big neon sign that was given to them in 1973 and says, it's a constitutional right. Shut up, peasant. This is the way it goes. So I think that's part of the emotional outburst. Because there's been a lot of this. I mean, Elizabeth Warren is shouting about this. Here, Kamala Harris, the vice president. She's just screaming, essentially, about what's going on here.
Those Republican leaders who are trying to weaponize the use of the law against women, will we say, how dare they? How dare they tell a woman what she can do and cannot do with her own body? How dare they? How dare they try to stop her from determining her own future? How dare they try to deny women their rights and their freedoms?
That's just not a legal argument, Clay. Not even trying to be one.
Well, and look, if you believe, as I do, that we have 50 state laboratories, then there will be 50 different laws as it pertains to abortion, right? I mean, that's where we're headed. And the New York Times did a study that found that that Roe v. Wade being eliminated on a federal level was 86% of existing abortions would still occur. Now, I don't know if that's true. One positive in the last 50 years, I know people can't talk about positives, is the overall number of abortions have continued to decline. And I do think, Buck, that everybody out there listening would say, and that this should be a goal, the number of accidental pregnancies should continue to decline in the decades ahead. I would like to think, right? Because there are all different sorts of ways to avoid getting pregnant. And so teenage pregnancy is down massive. I don't know exactly why that is. I think it's something that deserves a substantial amount of study. When we were kids growing up, Buck, it used to not be uncommon for 14 and 15-year-olds to have babies. There's almost no 14 and 15-year-olds statistically having children now. So the number of teenage pregnancies, the number of people that are having children at young ages continues to decline. And so I would hope that by having this now in the political realm, where people debate, where people have to defend their perspective, whatever it is, and where everybody can go vote and share whatever their opinion is, that it's going to actually, in the long run, dial down the intensity and the anger and the vitriol that surrounds this issue. Will it? I don't know. But over the last 49 years, it certainly hasn't diminished. And we got people breaking police car windows all over L.A. And let me just, by the way, bring up the dumbest person in media. I got to give her this title. She is the dumbest person in media. Joy Behar went on The View yesterday. And we were talking about this off air, Buck. I legitimately wonder what arguments are made to Joy Behar, and she says, no, that's too dumb for me to say. She said as a result of this report, she's worried about racial segregation in American schools, Buck. Listen to Cut 6. The dumbest woman in media, Joy Behar, weighing in.
My worry is that this is just the beginning. Next, they'll go after gay marriage and maybe the board, what is it, Brown versus Board of Education? Yeah. They already eroded our voting rights a little bit. So I see fascism down the line here. I don't know.
You notice, Clay, the first thing I said, I see idiocy right now on the airwaves with Joy Behar. The first thing I said was that the most unserious argument is now the Supreme Court's just going to overturn everything. You're going to have no rights. This is just a spasm of emotion from people who haven't actually thought through. Never mind. I mean, reading the actual draft opinion, that's way beyond a lot of the people opining on this. And you and I were texting. What we do as soon as this comes out, read the opinion so you actually have some idea, right? That's our step one. Joy's step one. Oh, God, I don't even want to know what it is.
Well, and by the way, he specifically mentions in this opinion
that this does not occur to anything else.
It doesn't apply to the things that she's worried about, right?
But the other part of this is that for the pro-life, so there's the legal argument about returning this to the states and just ending the fiction of a constitutional right to abortion. I mean, it has always been a fiction. It has been obvious from the start. It was honestly just an outrageous violation of core constitutional principle to try to fabricate this, and they got away with it for decades, which is pretty insane. But for the pro-life movement, this now means two things. One, they're on a playing field where they can actually now, to your point, Clay, about making the case, now the pro-life movement in different states isn't dealing with it, because the right to abortion, it wasn't even just the constitutional right aspect of it that was fabricated. It was also all these special access provisions and where can you protest. And this got more protection and more absolutism from the left than any other right I can think of. This is going to shift the whole prism now so that the pro-life movement state by state can say, our goal is now to get the legislature to actually eliminate abortion, except probably when it's threat to the life of the mother, for example. I think you'll see a number of states where that happens. Instead of having to deal with the federal government just coming in and saying, well, there's a constitutional right, now you're actually going to have a political state-by-state fight where the pro-life movement feels like it can actually get what it wants, which is an end to abortion in a lot of ways that a lot of states, I think that's what you'll see. And they also just view it as saving lives. So even if it's, let's say, 25 states and 25 states, Clay, right? If the pro-life movement manages to get 25 states to dramatically limit, almost entirely eliminate abortion, they view that as saving lives. So it's a game changer. It's going to motivate and mobilize them a whole lot all across the country.
I don't think there's any doubt that there will be fewer abortions, right? I mean, and that's what the data will reflect. And again, I just think 50 state laboratories, let's have that battle. Let's see what ends up happening. What I believe should happen is get the opinion out, make it 6-3. And then I think what you have to think about politically, we should have this discussion too. What's it mean for the midterms, but also what's it mean for the Supreme Court going forward? 6-3 to me is more important than 5-4 because the danger in a 5-4 vote, Buck, and I'm just going to put it out there, the danger in a 5-4 vote, we have got a lot of crazy people in this country. In a 5-4 vote, you are effectively telling, especially while there's a Democratic president, if you were to engage in violence and remove one of those voters, then you've got the potential to swing it back immediately. And that's pretty terrifying, I think, which is why if Chief Justice Roberts really cares about the overall trajectory of his court, a 6-3 vote would make it a lot safer. I'm being honest, a lot safer for the majority out there.
Yeah, and that opinion should come out now, by the way.
Yeah,
not in the 100%. End of June.
Now.